Good morning, guys. Am I audible to you? Am I audible to you? Yes. Please turn on the cameras. Please do turn on the cameras. Okay. Yesterday we were discussing about the secularism topic, religious pluralism and secularism. We have discussed about how the Western model of secularism emerged from its own unique features of secularization, and what is the nature of secularism as an ideology in the West compared to what it is in India, isn't it? And also this relation between state and religion in the Western mode of secularism compared to India, and also the challenges faced by each model of secularism due to its own unique homegrown challenges, isn't it? So these were the two questions which were asked in GS paper 1 previously. Look at the first question. It was a pretty direct question which was asked in 2018. How the Indian concept of secularism is different from Western model of secularism? Discuss. How the Indian concept of secularism different from Western model of secularism? Discuss. Okay. It is a direct question. You can answer the table. I have given you the table. How the Western model of secularism, Indian model of secularism, origin, nature, relation between state and religion, and the respective challenges. Okay. Now look at this question. Pretty interesting question. What can France learn from the Indian constitution's approach to secularism? What can France learn from the Indian constitution approach to secularism? Can anybody answer this question? Yesterday you have attended the class, so can you give me some points? You can use your mic. Yes. Protection to minorities is protection to minorities. See, the problem with respect to the kind of secularism that was enabled or that was adopted in France society, it was good, but it was more suitable to the homogeneous societies. It is not suitable to the heterogeneous societies like India. But unfortunately or fortunately, the France as a society, it has become more and more heterogeneous in the last 2 or 3 decades with more immigration. So their idea of secularism is not compatible to this diversified population, religious pluralistic society, isn't it? So in that context, there are certain aspects which the France can learn from India. First and foremost, protection to the minorities. Example, Article 29, Article 30. That means provide the minorities to preserve their culture. If not the religion, at least let them preserve their culture, like their attire, their food, their music, their language, and also give them certain educational rights, isn't it? Also preserve their culture, just like how India has provided certain some amount of recognition to each and every language, provide them certain linguistic rights as well, celebrate their festivals, provide holiday on their festival, isn't it? All that you need to do is give them holiday on their festival. It gives them a sense of belongingness to the nation state, that yes, I belong to this nation, I belong to this country, isn't it? That sense of belongingness is very important to preserve the national integration, right? And give them political adequate representation in the politics. Make sure that they are adequately represented. Adequately represented in politics, economic spheres of life. Minorities tend to be marginalized. Minorities tend to be marginalized. So you can provide them affirmative action. Provide them affirmative action, which means provide reservation. So these are some of the measures that can be adapted, and also provide some sort of reasonable restrictions on the freedom of speech and expression. See, what is the can France as a society is known for absolute freedom of speech and expression. Yesterday we discussed all of these things. How there is nothing blasphemous, nothing can offend. It doesn't matter even if it offends the religious sentiments of any section. Freedom of speech and expression is given and kept at a higher pedestal. It might be possible, or it might be possible in a homogeneous society where there is only one religion. But if it happens in the heterogeneous society, it leads to ethnic conflicts. It leads to religious conflicts, isn't it? So that is the problem. Provide reasonable restrictions to freedom of speech and expression. So give them minority rights. Provide the representation. Make sure that they are adequately represented in all the spheres, education, economic and political spheres of life through reservations. Preserve their language. Provide reasonable restriction to the freedom of speech and expression. Prevent any such kind of any such kind of statements or comments which may end up hurting the religious sentiments of a certain sections, so that social fabric of the society can be preserved. So these are certain aspects that France can learn from India's constitutional approach to the secularism, right? So how do you start this answer? First of all, start with introduction, saying that what is secularism. Define the secularism. Secularism is an ideology which has different connotations. In the French society, or in the Western model of secularism, it refers to strict separation of church from the state, whereas it in India, as an ideology, where the state is supposed to maintain equidistance from all the religions. Okay. However, there are certain issues with respect to French mode of, or in Western mode of secularism, Western model of secularism. Then write down the issues. Yesterday we have discussed it. So in this context, it is time France should learn from India and adopt certain principles to make sure that how a diversified society works. Okay. So done with this. I've given notes till here yesterday. So anyways, we have discussed in length and breadth of this topic yesterday, so I'm not getting deeper into it again. So I've given the hints. Please try to write an answer on this topic. Okay. Please answer these two questions. The first question was pretty easy. Second question, use these hints. Okay. Now, next, diversity. Yesterday we have discussed about religious diversity. Today we are going to discuss about linguistic diversity. Okay. Linguistic diversity. So there is a saying in Hindi, कोस कोस पर बदले पानी चार कोस पर पानी, which loosely translates to just like how the taste of the water changes every few kilometers, the dialect also changes. So it reflects the linguistic diversity of India. Every 100 kilometers you find a new dialect or a new language. That is a level of linguistic diversity that India possesses. As per the census, there are around 121 languages which are spoken by at least 10,000 people. Right? And if you talk about all the languages, irrespective of the demographic size of the speakers, the total number of languages are 19,500. No, but the problem is we can no more boast of this linguistic diversity within a century. As per People Linguistics Survey of India, PLSI, more than half of India's languages may become extinct, completely die. They may become extinct in the next 50 years. Right? So This is the problem. The problem is need to preserve the linguistic diversity. The problem is there are certain threats to the linguistic diversity. So before talking about what are these threats to the linguistic diversity and what India should do about it, my question to you is that why do we care about this linguistic diversity? What if, let's say, some 1,000 or 2,000 languages have been become extinct? What are we going to lose? Why should we care? All that I need to do, not to know is need to know is why should we care? Tell me. Take a guess. First, let's start with this aspect. Need to preserve the linguistic diversity. Will is cultural diversity, right? Okay. And what if we lose cultural diversity? Right? What if we lose cultural diversity? First and foremost, the problem is we are going to lose the traditional knowledge. Traditional knowledge, right? Very good. Traditional knowledge. India, owing to its see, language is not just a tool of communication. It is an identity. When the language becomes extinct, all the other aspects which are closely related to the language becomes extinct. What are they? Your music. If the language is gone, music is gone. The linguistic related music is gone. The traditional knowledge is gone. Your religion is gone, which is closer to that particular, which is highly affiliated to that language, because that language helped you to penetrate the religion to deeper into the pockets. So all the other aspects of the society are going to become extinct whenever the language becomes extinct. So it's all to do it. The traditional knowledge is going to be lost. Why is this traditional knowledge so important to us? It provides information about multiple cropping patterns, indigenous knowledge about cropping patterns, irrigation practices, medicinal practices. Each and every tribe has their own irrigation practice, medicinal practices, everything. So the treasure troves of traditional knowledge will be lost. And this traditional knowledge is very, very important for us to undertake modern day scientific research and development. So that is one aspect. And as I said, if linguistic diversity is gone, let's say there are certain languages become extinct, which means you are you are accepting that there are certain communities whose educational and economic opportunities are gone. For example, if your language is gone, there are high chances that your educational and economic opportunities are also gone. How are you going to communicate? You will be forced to learn a different language. You will be forced to read and write and speak in a different language, isn't it? So this is going to result in imbalanced regional development. This is what happening in most of the tribal pockets. They are not spoken in their own language. They are not reading and writing in their own language. There is a reason why they are not properly being economically integrated into the mainstream society because of the linguistic barriers. Try providing them education in their own language. Probably they are going to empower themselves better than the rest of the communities. So language is important. Language is not just a tool of communication. It is a tool of social mobility. It provides economic opportunities. It provides educational opportunities. If certain languages become extinct, it is going to dearly impact. It's going to predominantly impact their economic status, right? So this is the thing. This may leads to for inclusive growth. You can say that it is important for inclusive growth because educational and economic opportunities are going to be educational and economic opportunities are going to be determined by the language, isn't it? And not only that, preserving the language is very important for people participation in the governance. For example, let's say the government has initiated a scheme or a policy. If it has to explain it to the people, it has to speak the language of the community. There is, see, have you gone through any village? If you go to the primary healthcare centers or the local schools or Anganwadis, you see the slogans written on them in the local language, in the vernacular language. Why is that? The government message is being penetrated to the people till the grassroots level. It is very important. It is very important for them to make them understand the importance of vaccination, importance of Swachh Bharat, importance of cleanliness, importance of education, health, family planning. So, for example, if the government is not speaking the language of the local community, how are they going to make you question, make you hold you accountable? How are they going to make you? They're going to hold you accountable. For example, let's say, see what I'm trying to say is that you may assume that in each and every state they're using the local language. No, in each and every state there are only hardly one or two official languages or three official languages. There is a great deal of linguistic diversity in certain states. There are certain tribal pockets where they speak the local language. They are not literate in the other languages, but you are providing them the application form in the official language of the state, right? How many of them in Bihar? How many of them are speaking Maithili? In Karnataka, how many of them speaking certain languages like Siddhi or Pakki? They're tribal languages, right? So that is a problem. So for people participation and for good governance, people participation in the governance, you need to speak the local language, right? People's participation is also important. Transparency, accountability. The governance becomes accountable only when they understand what you're saying, right? The most important aspect of there is a great need to preserve the language, linguistic diversity, because discrimination in the aspect of language may eventually lead to some sort of insurgency or separatist tendency, or it may lead to ethnic conflict, isn't it? The best example is what we have seen in the Sri Lanka. How the majority Sinhalese government or the Sinhalese communities discriminated the minority Tamil people, Tamil language, Tamil culture. That has resulted in civil war. That has resulted in insurgency. The same thing goes with the Bangladesh. How do you think what happened to the East Pakistan? Because the West Pakistan did not take into consideration of the Bengali interests. Bengali language was not given its due respect and recognition in the administration. They were made to feel like they were secondary citizens. So out of this, there is a resentment, and there develops insurgency. There develops separatism. There develops bloody civil war. So it is very important. As I said, language is not just a tool of communication. Each and every aspect of life is actually tied closely to the language. Your dietary patterns, your music, your local economic traditional economic occupations, your indigenous knowledge, arts, architecture, folk songs, everything is gone if the language is gone. And if that language is not given due recognition by the state, you believe that you don't belong to the state. The government is speaking a different language. The government is conducting its meeting in a different language. You never believe that you are part of the mainstream community. You are always made to feel that you are the secondary citizen. So out of it, this is important. So for national integration, it is very important to preserve the linguistic diversity. A sense of belongingness should be inculcated in each and everybody. The sense of belongingness comes with adequate due recognition to me, my identity, my language, my culture, isn't it? So these are the reasons why we need to preserve the linguistic diversity. It is not something that we have to do get some benefits. It's a necessity. It is a necessity for a diversified country like us, right? Okay. Now the question is, what are the threats to the linguistic diversity? Obviously, only when you get to know the threats, then you can do something about it. So, what do you believe that these are the threats to the linguistic diversity? Globalization, okay, fair enough. Anything else? Political, social, economic isolation. Don't you think it is a consequence of linguistic threat, to the consequence of the threats rather than the cause of the threat? So, when the language becomes extinct, it may lead to political, social, or economic isolation. But I'm asking about the causes. You can use your mic to this say the answer. Be interactive. Urbanization. Very good. Urbanization. Okay. Okay. The points are fine. Let me start with something. Threats to the linguistic diversity. You know, the biggest problem to the threat to the linguistic diversity, formal education. Okay. Formal education, slightly reason. Okay. The biggest threat to the linguistic diversity. I'm talking about those languages which are hardly spoken by 10,000 people. As per the census, there are around 120 languages which are spoken at least by the 10,000 people. But what about the rest of the languages? Which means the demographic size of the speakers itself is very less. So the biggest problem to the threat to linguistic diversity is dwindling size of demography of certain tribes. Have you heard about PVTGs, particularly vulnerable tribal groups? Particularly vulnerable tribal groups. These are certain tribal groups whose population has been declining, whose population size is very less. When the population becomes extinct, the language becomes extinct. There are no active speakers. Yesterday there was an article in the Hindi newspaper. If you see how the Dogri language in Jammu is becoming slowly extinct because there are no active speakers. Yesterday there was an article on this Dogri language in the Hindi newspaper. Please go through it. See, this is the problem. There are around 10 languages in the Karnataka which are critically endangered. Like this Hakki, Pikki, Siddhi. These are the tribes where the population size has already been declining. You know, the problem aggravates when there is no script to the language. Lack of script. When you don't have script, it becomes difficult to preserve the language, especially in the context of dwindling population size. You know, there are hardly 6 or 7 tribes in India which had a script. All the rest of the tribal languages did not have any script. So it is transmitted orally from generation to the generation. So when the active speakers become extinct, when the population size becomes lesser, then the language becomes extinct. So they, what is the why are we discussing about this threat? There is a policy implication on the government. The government will get to know that what to do. Write a script, codify a script to that particular language and preserve it. Right. So that is the thing. Next, as you said, of course, urbanization, urban migration. Basically, what is urbanization? Increasing population in the urban areas, especially through rural migration. So this urban migration has actually made most of the languages extinct. See, these are the languages, very native languages. Bihar's native languages have already become extinct. They have pushed to the oblivion. There are hardly anybody speaking Maithili now, right? Because there is increasing influence of Hindi in the state. So the native languages have become extinct, right? Maithili, Magadhi, right? So this is the thing, right? Urbanization plus anything else, globalization. With globalization, there is an increasing penetration of global languages. So the borders have become blurred. What is globalization? Seamless flow of growing interconnectedness between different parts of the world, facilitated by seamless flow of goods and services, trade, investment, people, and ideas. When there is too much of exposure to the other languages, the economic relevance of certain languages become irrelevant. Economic relevance of certain languages become they will be reduced. Most of the vernacular languages have become extinct, and also the vernacular speakers are also reducing because its economic relevance has been reduced. Most of the vernacular languages, the medium of instruction is in the English medium, right? Medium of instruction is in English medium, and you are migrating into the urban area where a different language is spoken. Probably the majority language of the India or majority language of the state is spoken in the urban areas. So where is the scope for you to speak your language? Forget about writing, let alone writing. You don't even speak the language. So globalization. Next, most important aspect. What is the threat to the linguistic diversity? Apart from urbanization, globalization, digitalization. Digitalization. These three aspects created an environment where only few languages survived. Right? Look at this. Digital colonization. Indian languages lost out to the English on the internet. See, Indian internet is dominated by the Indian language. It is very important to penetrate or to inculcate Indian languages into the digital format. Very, very important. Otherwise, you will see people writing their language in English, just like how we text. We use the alphabets in English. Even to say something, we use the English alphabets. We are no more we don't we are going to no more use the script, the vernacular script, our mother tongue. Right? Come on, think about it. Texting. How many of you are writing? There was a time when letters used to be written on the postcard. People used to write it in their languages, in their mother tongue. Nowadays, people hardly get a chance or scope to write something in their own language. This is actually a problem. I'll tell you why. This creates an assumption that what is the need for teaching our children this mother tongue? Anyways, they're going to pick up the language during the socialization as a part of the socialization, so they'll be able to speak. What is the need for reading and writing? Yes, probably they're right. What is the need for reading and writing? Because whatever you're speaking, writing it in English. You're using the English alphabets even to speak your Kannada, Telugu, Tamil, or Marathi. This is the threat. This is the threat I'm talking about. Digital colonization. Right? So, next. There is one interesting change that had happened in family, kinship, and marriage, which has resulted as a threat to the linguistic diversity. Can you tell me what is the change in that in the family or marriage? What change has been witnessed in family? Rising nuclear families. I'll tell you what. Rising nuclear families and neo-local families and cross-cultural marriages. Nuclear families, neo-local families. That means the family, the nuclear family, after the marriage, they don't stay either with the parents' family or maternal family or paternal family. Either the husband family or the wife's family. They live separately. So rising nuclear families, rising neo-local families, and increasing cross-cultural marriages. So they will find a common language which is spoken. For example, let's say there is a couple who belong to two different languages, belong to two different languages, and they have set up a nuclear family, and they are not in constant touch with the either of the families. The children are going to speak the language where they got settled rather than either of these two languages. Right? If a Bengali and Punjabi get married and settled in Delhi, there are high chances that the kids are going to speak Hindi rather than either Bengali or Punjabi. Still, Bengali and Punjabi are still one of the few of the active, big languages, major languages. Think about the other languages. Some Pahadi and Assami, if they have married and living in Delhi, let's say, or Bangalore, which language do they speak? Probably English or Hindi. The kids don't speak either of the languages. This is the thing. Especially the problem is, I'll tell you, nuclear families staying away from the joint families. There is there is some lack, in terms of the socialization. In the joint family, the language is fed into you during at a very early stage. Your cognitive capability of learning a new language is going to be reduced with increasing age. This is scientific. This is based on scientific study. The kind of linguistic capabilities one could pick up at a growing phase is much higher, much better. The capability is much better at the younger age. So during the growing phase, if you're not able to learn a new language, it becomes difficult when you grow up. So that kind of socialization is not being provided thanks to the rising nuclear families. So this is also one threat to the linguistic diversity. Okay, and the government policies are only adding to this problem. There are certain government policies, especially by the local state governments. They're also not doing their bit, but adding to the problem of posing more threats to the linguistic diversity. For example, you all prepare for your state PCS exams. Okay, your state exams, state service exams. What are the languages in which you can write the exam? One is English and other is the official language of the state. What about the other languages in that state? You understand? And also there is a language paper. You're supposed to pass the language paper. And that language is generally the official language. Apart from the English, that language tend to be the official language of the state. So basically, you're making it mandatory for everybody to speak the official language, which is fair enough, but you're not giving equal chance to each and every language. You understand my point? So making the majority language, linguistic proficiency in the majority language a mandatory criteria is actually posing a threat to the linguistic diversity. You're encouraged to speak and read and write in one language and making it believe that the rest of the languages are not as important as this language. So state itself is creating that linguistic discrimination. On top of it, there are certain states which are actually providing these assimilation policies, implementing these assimilation policies. Best example is West Bengal. Look at this. There is a demand for Gorkha land because it is a Bengali language issue. Because of the Bengali language issue. Because the government made it announce that Bengali should be a compulsory subject from class 1 to 10 in the Gorkha land, who are ethnically different from the rest of the Bengali society. They speak their language. They speak their Gorkha language. They're ethnically different. Their language is different. Their culture is different. Just because they're under one administrative political setup, it doesn't mean that they have to speak the same language. So these kind of policies often exaggerate or aggravate this problem of posing more threats to the linguistic diversity. So assimilation policies, language imposition, making proficiency in the majority language a criteria to get admitted into the government job. That is also a kind of language imposition. And lack of provision of primary education in the mother tongue. As per the Article 350B of the Constitution, it is a responsibility of the state to provide the primary education in mother tongue. It is a constitutional obligation. How many of the minority linguistic groups are actually receiving their education in the, even in the government schools? How many of them are actually receiving their education in the vernacular languages, in their own minority language? So the medium of instruction. So lack of provision of education in mother tongue. This is a threat to the linguistic diversity. If there is no state patronization, you cannot expect the languages to survive. Forget about the state patronization. In fact, the state is acting contradictorily and providing it, making it aggravating the issue, making it all the more difficult for the minority language to survive. Right? This is the issue. Clear with this? Okay. Now, next topic. National language debate. Okay. Pretty interesting. Lot of misconceptions, lot of what do you call political debates, even in the news channels, social media. Okay. And unfortunately, most of them do not even know for the fact that India never had a national language. There is no such thing as a national language for India. We have official languages. Then what is the difference between a national language and official language? So we are going to discuss all these aspects. So let's start with the national language debate. This debate started with this gentleman, Lord Macaulay. You're done with your history? You're done with your history? So what is Macaulay Minute? What is Macaulay Minute? It is a minute, or it is a committee report on Indian education. This Macaulay Minute has Lord Macaulay has suggested certain suggestions to the colonial government to take up educational reforms. If you remember, they wanted to introduce introduce English language, and also introduce modern scientific education in the place of Oriental education. Okay. So the seed has germinated here. Modern English education was introduced. And also, English was the official language or the language of communication of the British government. Language of administration. See, the language of administration, that means the state's patronization is, the state is the English is patronized by the state, and English education is being taught in the state sponsored schools, right? That had made certain local or Indian languages relegated to the back backbench, which means those classical languages like Sanskrit or Persian, Urdu, who used to be these, which used to be the court languages of the earlier kingdoms, they have become extinct. Not extinct, at least they have become less relevant, isn't it? Because this government is not speaking either of these two languages. It is conducting it day-to-day administration in English. And in fact, Macaulay Minute said that we have to produce a group of people, Indian in color and Indian in color, but Western in language, taste, and outlook, so that they act as messengers of British state, colonial state, to the local population. And that is how the language and culture is supposed to be filtered down to the masses. That becomes easy. Then it becomes easier to rule the country, right? So this has made the classical languages like Sanskrit or Persian, they have lost state patronization, which used to be court languages. They have lost state patronization. Okay, so they developed a sense of resentment. They developed a sense of resentment. Of course, this modern day, this English education was actually accepted by most of the social religious reformers, like Raja Ram Mohan Roy accepted it. Even Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, he also accepted it, because they believe that Western education and English education is going to improve the status of the Muslims in India. That's what Syed Ahmad Khan thought. And also, Raja Ram Mohan Roy thought that this access to the modern day English education is going to improve the rationality, spirit of inquiry, and reform the society. It was accepted. But later on, there is the lack of patronization to the Indian languages has created a sense of resentment among the masses and also among the educated elite also. Right? They were literally secondary citizens because state never spoke about these languages. Then what happened? This resentment against the government, against the Britishers, for this linguistic issue was utilized by the leadership of the national movement to broaden their ideological base of the social base of the national movement. That means you have, this is like asking the people to say, asking the people, see, you have got one more reason to fight against the Britishers. Of course, you have your reasons, economic reasons, political reasons, but you have got another cultural reason. So the ideological base of the national movement has been expanded. The social base of the national movement has been expanded. So this was properly utilized by the leadership of the national movement to fight against the British government. Language has become the one of the pillars, right? Then the real question is what happened after the independence. The struggle has culminated in India's independence, and after the independence is, now that British government has been removed, now we are making our own government, sovereign government. Then what should be the language? Okay, the leadership, yeah, has brilliantly utilized this sentiment. Now they also can't find a solution. They also couldn't find a solution. They have to find a solution to it. You understand? You ask them to fight against the Britishers and remove the English language. Then what should be the language then? That created a series of debates in the Constituent Assembly while framing the Constitution, asking as to which language should be the national language. And during the debates, they believed that India never had a national language. Glad that we could use that as a sentiment against the Britishers, but now that we have to find a solution to it, we realize that India never had a national language. And in fact, India can never have a national language. Rather, India should have an official language. So the goalpost has been shifted to official language from the national language. Now the question is, how national language is different from official language? You understood the historical underpinning behind this debate, right? So how the national language is different from official language? National language is a manifestation of it is a socio-cultural identity of population. It is your identity because you speak the language, whereas official language is utilized for administration. You may or may not speak the language, but you're using it for the administrative communication. It is not your identity. Your official language may not be your identity, but your national language is something that national language is that language with which you feel a sense of belongingness, with which your social and cultural aspects have been attached to, with which your emotions have been attached to. So that is your identity. This is just a tool of communication for the administrative purpose. So national language is the language of the people. Official language is the state's language. Clear? And the best part is that there are no boundaries to the national language. National language transcends across the political boundaries. So the allegiance to the Tamil as a language is across the borders. You have a sense of belongingness to the Tamil as a language is there in the northern Sri Lanka and also southern part of India. The same thing goes for Punjabi. The allegiance to the language, Punjabi language, the emotion towards the Punjabi language is shared by the people across the border. The Pakistan, you go to the Amritsar and Lahore, they speak the same language, but either side of the border. The same thing goes with the Bangladesh or Bengali. The sense of belongingness and the emotion towards the language is shared on either side of the borders. The same thing goes with the certain languages in Bihar, northern Bihar, and Terai region of Nepal, where they speak certain languages like Maithili. They have sense of belongingness to that language, right? So it transcends across the political boundaries. For example, Konkani as a language is spoken in Maharashtra, Goa, and some parts of Karnataka, right? So this is considered as linguistic nationalism, Tamil nationalism, Punjabiyat, Bengali nationalism. That means you're showing your religions and you're identifying yourself as a Tamilian, Punjabi, or a Bengali, or a Kashmiri, right? Whereas an official language, it neither gives you identity nor is a sense of belongingness. It is purely utilized for this communication purpose, and it is confined to the political boundaries. It is confined to the political boundaries. Konkani might be Konkani might be an official language in Goa. Even though there are active speakers in Maharashtra, it is not. It cannot be extended to the Maharashtra beyond the borders of the Goa. No. So this is the thing. Now the thing is that during the debates in the during the debates in Constituent Assembly, the leadership believed that each and every community, each and every region has their own national language. How can we have one national language? India as a nation state was made which comprises of multiple languages. So we cannot have a single national language. Everybody has their own sense of belongingness to a particular language. We can't have a certain language, same language, which provides socio-cultural identity to everybody. Rather, we can have a language which can be utilized for the administration communication. That's it. So the goalpost has been shifted to the official language. Right. Now, so this was clearly reflected in the constitution. Okay. What are the provisions made in the constitution with respect to the language? Article 29 and 30 has given rights to the linguistic minority to preserve their language, and also it gave them rights to manage educational institutions. Manage educational institutions. And eighth schedule in the constitution, which gave recognition to almost 22 languages. Okay, 22 languages. And Article 343, this debate was reflected in Article 343, which says that the official languages are going to be English and Hindi. English and Hindi written in Devanagari script. However, this is going to be for 15 years. Beyond 15 years, if at all the power was given to the Article 340 has empowered the Parliament to continue Hindi beyond the 15 years if it feels necessary. Otherwise, in the original constitution, Hindi was made an official language. Sorry, English. My bad. English was made an official language only till 15 years. Beyond that, the power was given to the Parliament to extend it. Okay. Of course, by 1963, there was a growing resentment among the South Indian states with respect to the where there were suspicions that English is not going to be continued as an official language, and that has resulted in linguistic conflicts and demands and agitations, especially in Tamil Nadu. That language debate made the government to give an assurance that no, we are not doing away with the English as an official language. We are continuing it. So that has resulted in enactment of Official Languages Act in 1963. Union government had to give an assurance through this law saying that yes, we are actually producing continuing with the English, right? So this is what constitution has talked about. And Article 345, what is Article 345? It empowered the state to choose its own official language. States can choose more than one official languages. So freedom for the states to choose their official language. So there are certain states where there are around three official languages. Bengali is one of the official languages in Assam. If the state believes that there is enough demography in the state who speaks a certain language, it can actually it can choose that as an official language. Add it to the list of the official languages. Article 350 A and B. Telugu and Urdu. Yes, in Telangana it is Telugu and Urdu. Both of them are official languages. Article 350A and 350B. Okay. 350A, a linguistic minority commissioner, an official is to be appointed. And also 350B. What is 350B? provision of my education, provision of mother tongue as a medium of instruction in the primary education in mother tongue. And the best thing that happened to India right after independence, it has actually enhanced and strengthened the federalism. Right? It gave idea. It what you call strength to the idea of destructible states with indestructible union. What is it? Linguistic organization of states. Linguistic reorganization of states has actually enabled linguistic reorganization of state. This state enabled people to choose their own government. Basically, each and every linguistic community has got the rights to rule themselves. Right? So these are the constitutional provisions and the post-independent policies which were taken to reduce to cater to the accommodate the linguistic diversity. Right? Okay, clear. But do you think the linguistic debate has come to cease? Is it still there? It is still there. We speak about language issue day in day out, right? Especially in the urban areas, unfortunately. Ideally speaking, we believe that in the urban areas, due to the cosmopolitan culture, the linguistic language should be the last factor which should create any source of conflict and strain in the society. But unfortunately, this is the fact, isn't it? So, what is this new language debate is all about? Hmm? Three language formula. Remember, one nation, one language. Three language formula is not an issue, but specifically talking about one nation, one language. One nation, one language. What is one nation, one language? What is that idea? I mean, what do they want? What are they trying to say? Tell me. See, the idea of one nation, one language believes that there should be, the proposition is that there should be progressive uses of Hindi in the non Hindi speaking regions with state sponsorship. Okay. Like increasing uses of Hindi in official communications between the states, increasing uses of Hindi in the competitive exams, education, and other cultural aspects. That was the idea behind one nation, one language. Okay, a common language which can be what is it? Just a second. A common language which can be spoken and understood in every part of the nation. Yes, that was the idea. I don't know if it is everybody understands it, but the idea behind this proposition is that everybody should speak it. Okay. So one nation, one language debate is all about this thing. Now tell me the arguments in favor of it and against it. That's it. It is just to encourage a debate on it. Just tell me arguments in favor of it. Tell me. Come on. Do you support it? There should be one common language. National unification like foreign countries. Very good. National unification like foreign countries. Which foreign countries are you talking about? Effective communication with the people of the country. Effective communication. Fair enough. Okay. Having one language, the idea, arguments generally that are given in the favor of this having one nation, one language in one nation, one language debate is that this having one language, one common language will encourage national integration and control and regulate the fissurous tendencies that are often seen in the diverse society like India. In fact, unification of Italy, unification of Germany happened on the linguistic lines. The earlier form of nationalism was rallied behind the linguistic identity. The nationalism as the modern day concept emerged in the European societies. In the modern day European society, where it became pretty much where it became popularized, the concept of nationalism became popularized with unification of Germany, unification of Italy. You might have studied in world history how they were unified. Different small states and vassals were unified. Unified by Bismarck, unified by Garibaldi, right? So they rallied this idea. The earlier form of nationalism was rallied behind this common linguistic identity. So probably having one common language may encourage or may strengthen national integration and regulating any sort of fissurous tendencies that are tend to be seen in a linguistic diversified society like India. And the other argument, as you have said, as somebody said, is the other argument is that effective communication. This effective communication is going to result in seamless flow of people belonging to different linguistic regions within the border of India. So this leads to seamless migration. Seamless migration. This is very, very important because see that this is one of the reasons why three language formula should be introduced. There is nothing wrong in three language formula. Okay, there is nothing wrong in three language formula until and unless it is used as a backdoor entry of Hindi into the non-Hindi speaking states and making it official. But according to the constitution, states have got their own rights as per Article 345 to choose their own official language. Right? Now the question is seamless migration. India is going to witness great deal of migration, internal migration down the line, and it has already started. The great mass migration that the history is going to witness because there is a significant change in the demographic transition in India. There are certain states where the total fertility rate has come down to below the replacement level, like below 2.1. There are certain states where the total fertility rate is much higher than the national average. It is still 3, 2.8, and 2.7. This lopsided demographic changes is going to lead to the migration of people, especially the young working age population from one region to the other region in the search of jobs. Probably there are certain states who are going to be aged much faster, just like in the European societies. If you look at the southern part of India, most of the states have already acquired this total fertility rate of 1.8, 1.9, and 1.7, which are comparable to the advanced economies in the world. So these states may down the line are going to see a significant labor shortage, especially in the labor intensive and manufacturing sectors. So this is going to result in mass migration. So if you want economic unification of India or political unification started way back with with the advent of the colonial government, and then it was solidified with having a common constitution in a sovereign country. India has become republic, but economic unification is still undergoing till 2016. The economic unification could not happen because each and every state had its own taxation system. With the advent of the GST, goods and service tax, we have got one tax for the entire nation, irrespective of the state. So that has resulted in economic unification. So with the increasing economic unification, this economic unification is going to be completed only when there is seamless movement of the laborers as well, not just the goods and services. So for seamless migration and economic unification, probably I'm not saying it is necessary, probably we may need one common language, right? So these are the arguments in favor of one nation, one language. Can't bring any more arguments. Okay. Now think of it. What are the concerns with respect to it? What are the concerns with respect to it? Tell me. What is the biggest concern? The problem is we never had one national language. You may use it for communication purpose, fine, but you cannot expect the people to develop a sense of belongingness to that language. So the idea and the phrase itself is flawed. One nation, one language. There is an official language. Okay. So this leads to, yes, imposition leads to distress, disputes. Yes. So this encourages ethnicity based nationalism. This encourages ethnic nationalism. What is ethnic nationalism? Your nationalism or your sense of belongingness, your nation is identified by a particular language, particular religion, or a particular culture, any particular ethnic identity. But India as a nation state is not built upon this ethnic nationalism, rather civic nationalism. You are giving your allegiance to an abstract idea of India as a nation and you are accepting the common constitution, right? It is not tied with respect to one ethnic culture, one ethnic identity, but having and promoting one language as the identity of the entire nation is going to encourage this, right? This ethnic nationalism is going to lead to regionalism. You're right, which may lead to regionalism, insurgency, sons of soil tendencies. Understand? So the question is again the same thing. What happened in Bangladesh or what happened in Sri Lanka may also happen in India. What is the guarantee that it is not going to happen if you keep disrespecting the national integrity, disrespecting the languages, regional languages, right? And also, this leads to, this may lead to imbalanced regional development. Imbalanced regional development. Having one language and making it mandatory for all the groups, are you not trying to impact, are you not trying to threaten their education, economic opportunities, right? Already in the most of the exams conducted by the central government, there is already a concern from the non-Hindi speaking states that why the question paper is not given in our languages. It is printed either in English and Hindi, even in UPSC or any, all the exams conducted by UPSC, SSC, Railway, all this, either Hindi or English. So it already created a barrier for certain vernacular medium students, probably a Marathi or at least a Kannada, Tamil medium or Telugu medium student. The barrier has been created. Now you are expecting more and more communication, more progressive uses of it. So it may eventually lead to imbalance of regional development. So this is the problem with respect to the one nation, one language debate. The solution is three language formula. Solution is what? Three language formula. Yes, there are certain problems with respect to the seamless migration. You want people to understand other languages. What is the advantage of three language formula? Can you tell me? What do you think is the advantage of three language formula? This, with the advent of seamless migration, which we are going to see, so with the advent of economic unification. You need seamless flow of laborers. So you need linguistic affinity to understand them, right? Three language formula is going to be helpful in that aspect. Okay, migration, it will help in the era of migration. Everyone will be multilingual and they will be skilled. More opportunities to get the diversified knowledge and employment. Right, right. Anything else with respect to uh, multilingual, will it improve the will it improve the skill? Okay, more economic opportunities, you can say that. That's what migration and economic opportunities is all about. Okay, most important thing is that when you are aware of the language, okay, when you're aware of the language, it will reduce your stereotypes about the community. You'll be exposed to not just the language, all the aspects of the culture. When you're exposed to the language, the literature, the music, the cultural aspects, everything, then the stereotypes are going to be removed. Exactly, it breeds appreciation of the other culture. That cultural affinity is going to be increased. Biggest problem in India is right now, biggest problem, at least that's what I have experienced, having gone through the length and breadth of the nation in different parts of India. There is great deal of ignorance with respect to the other culture. North Indians don't have great understanding of South Indians, and South Indians don't know anything about Northeastern people. Bengalis don't know anything about Goa Konkani people. They don't know the culture. They don't know the local festivals. They don't know the harvesting festivals. Forget about anything. They are not even aware how many of non Hindi speaking people may they are aware of the Chhat Puja. We don't know. The same thing. How many of the Bihari people may know about Onam, right? So this lack of cultural affinity has resulted is going to result in intolerance of other culture. If you want a country like India, such a diversified country like India, to sustain without any fissurous tendencies and friction among the communities, you want people to have that tolerance levels. The tolerance levels encouraged with cultural affinity. When you're exposed to the other culture, as long as you're not exposed to the culture, you don't know anything. So this language is the gate which opens that exposure towards that culture. So that is why. So this is going to cultural increase cultural exposure, and it strengthens the national integration in that way. It enhances tolerance. So that is why it is always in a diverse. When you are living in a diverse society, you should have that inquisitive in you to learn a different language and understand. Try, try doing it. Okay, that's it. This is about linguistic diversity topic. I'm going to provide the notes. You can answer any question based on this topic. For example, let's say, what is the need to preserve the linguistic diversity? It breeds creativity. That is also yes, that is also good. And need to preserve the linguistic diversity. What are the threats to the linguistic diversity? And what about the national language debate? How national language is different from official language? What is this one nation, one language debate is all about? What are the arguments in favor of it? And what are the concerns with it? And how three language formula can become a solution to it? Okay. Okay. See, these are the issues. Recently, certain laws were increasingly. See, we have seen this tendency of naming of the schemes in Hindi, and non-Hindi speaking states have actually expressed their concerns over this practice. Okay. Recently, the IPC, CRPC, and Indian Evidence Act have been replaced by BNS, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. and there are other two laws which are also named in Hindi. And if you see in the last decade, there is not even a single scheme which I can think of which was named completely in English, right? So total sanitation campaign has become Swachh Bharat. National Nutrition Mission has become Poshan Abhiyan. Right? Awas Yojana, housing scheme has become Awas Yojana. Right? So this is the issue. So anyways, that is to do with linguistic diversity. Next topic, caste. Okay. Next topic is caste. Caste is one of the most important. Atmanirbhar is self-reliant has become Atmanirbhar. Everything. What do you call National Food Security Act, public distribution system. These are the names. What happened? Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. What was the need to make it into a different name? But anyways, that was an issue. Okay, Jandan Yojana, yes, all this thing. Okay. Next topic, caste. Caste is very unique and most important salient feature of Indian society. What exactly is caste? Caste is a system of social stratification in India, a system of social stratification in India where different social groups are placed in a hierarchy in terms of their ritual notion of purity and pollution. Okay, see, caste determines the social hierarchy. Okay, the traditional Hindu society is divided into four varnas. What are these varnas? Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. This is the fourfold Varna division. Okay, this is Varna framework. The traditional society is divided. This was written for the first time in Purusha Sukta hymn of Rig Veda. Okay, where it said that there are different people who are derived from different body parts of the Purusha or the Creator or the Lord. Brahmins arrived from head of the Purusha, Kshatriyas from the shoulders, Vaishyas from the thighs, and Shudras from feet. That was written in the Rig Veda, in the Purusha Sukta. Okay, so which means caste had religious backing. Okay, depending upon the origin, your social status is dependent. That means these castes are considered to be ritually purer compared to the Shudras, which are impure. So the division or the hierarchy is based on ritual notion of purity and pollution. It is based on ritual notion of purity and pollution. That means the degree of the purity is going to be reduced with reducing hierarchy. This purity and pollution is not with respect to your birth. It is going to be reflected in each and every aspect of your life. That means your diet is impure, your dressing pattern, your occupational patterns, your traditional rituals, everything is considered to be impure relative to the upper caste. So, what was an ideology has eventually become an institution. The ideology is that upper castes are impure based on their origin as per the dictats given by the religion, and lower castes are impure. It's purely based on religious ideology. But that impurity is not just with respect to your social status, it is reflected in your economic aspect, political aspect, cultural aspect, everything. Then it becomes an institution. So caste is not just an ideology. Caste is an institution as well. How it starts playing an important role in all the spheres of life, each and every aspect. However, talking about this framework, Varna framework, this framework of Varna is constant across the subcontinent. There is no doubt about its hierarchy. However, each and every Varna is divided into multiple castes and subcastes. Even within the Brahmins, there are multiple Brahmins. In Kshatriya, there are multiple Kshatriyas, Vaishya, Shudra, right? Now the question is, this hierarchy is fixed because it is clearly given by the, it's purely based on the notion of purity and pollution. But what about this hierarchy? This is not as fixed as it is in the Varna framework. The caste and subcaste are flexible in terms of their hierarchy, right? For example, Brahmin are superior to Kshatriya, but there are multiple Brahmins, South Indian Brahmins, Saraswat Brahmins, caste Brahmins. Who is superior to who? No, there is no framework. There is no pan-Indian framework for jati. This is Varna and that is jati, which is caste. There is no pan-Indian framework. In fact, often, apart from the ritual factors, there are certain secular factors which determine the ultimate status of the subcaste. Right? There are certain places where the other Kshatriya or other Vaishya, what do you call, castes are given prominence over other castes. They have the highest hierarchy owing to their economic power and political power. So that is jati. So here the hierarchy is also fixed on secular factors sometimes, both ritual and secular, both ritual and secular factors. This is the basic introduction of caste. I'm going to get into the features of the caste system. Before that, we have to talk about the emergence of the caste. There are multiple theories of the caste. So basically, if you have to introduce caste, caste is a system of social stratification in which the traditional Hindu society is divided into multiple social groups in a hierarchy based on ritual notion of purity and pollution. The ritual notion of purity and pollution is not just confined to your birth, but also the social status and each and every aspect of the society, each and every aspect of the life compared to like dietary pattern, dressing pattern, rituals, occupational patterns, all of them are considered as impure compared to the upper caste subculture. Thus, it is just not an ideology but also an institution. However, the hierarchy of the Varna is pan Indian, whereas the subcaste and caste and subcaste, their hierarchy is little flexible. There is no pan Indian textual framework. It is purely contextual, where apart from the ritual factors, there are certain secular factors like your economic strength, education, political strength. They also plays a role with respect to the hierarchy of the subcastes. Done. Now, before getting deeper into the caste system and its basic features, let's briefly talk about the emergence of caste system. Let's briefly talk about the emergence of the caste system. So there are multiple theories. I'm confining to the two major theories, and there is not even a single theory which can explain the emergence of the caste system without any flaws. In fact, this is not even necessary for the sake of the exam if you're preparing for GS. Okay, even in the optionals, you hardly find in the second paper one or two questions probably, but it's not that important. But to get into the debate, get into the discussion, it is better to start with the emergence of the caste system broadly. Okay, so first and foremost, the first idea is racial theory. Racial theory. Okay, what is the racial theory? According to this theory, According to the proponents of this theory, caste system was introduced by the Aryans who migrated from the Central Asia or the Western European societies to India, Indian subcontinent. When they migrated to the Indian subcontinent or when they invaded the Indian subcontinent, they comprised of these Aryans comprised of three classes. Basically, Aryan invasion, and these Aryans comprised of three classes: warriors, priests, and traders. They invaded the local Indian Aboriginal population, and thereby these classes or these occupational classes, these social classes have got higher status compared to the Aboriginal Indian people, Indian communities who lost. So, Indian Aborigines, they were given, they were considered as Shudras and given lower status. That was the racial theory or the Aryan invasion theory. Of course, there are multiple criticisms to this theory as well, and there is not even a single uh, uh, foolproof historical or credible evidence to this. Okay, next, second is occupational theory. Occupational theory. What is this occupational theory? According to this, the proponents of this theory believe that uh, the earlier traditional society was divided into multiple occupational groups, which we call it as division of labor. That means each and every section of the population got specified or specialized in one occupation. So the whole society is divided into different occupational groups. So it is basically a division of labor where it is a system of division of labor. System of division of labor. That's how it started. Where the society is divided into different occupational groups who got specialization in that particular occupation. Divided into different occupational groups. Then what happened? Each and every occupational group had started assuming themselves with a certain amount of subculture, a unique subculture. They have their own dressing patterns, their own dietary patterns, their rituals, their traditions, their culture. So eventually they developed a subculture. When they developed their own subculture, they erected boundaries and they started practicing endogamy. That means we are not supposed to marry across this occupational group, and that eventually given or strengthened the caste as an institution. That's how the caste has been metamorphosized and became to what it is right now. Right. So the subculture, once the subculture is done, like in terms of diet, in terms of rituals, in terms of anyways, they have their own occupation. So they're different in terms of their occupation, they're different in terms of their diet, in terms of rituals. Then this leads to erection of boundaries. And the boundaries is not just with respect to the cultural exchange. The boundaries also went beyond and started creating boundaries even for sake of marriage. And they developed the endogamy, which is a bulwark of the caste system, central feature of the caste system. But let me tell you, there are enough criticism for this occupational theory as well. Division of labor is fine, but division of laborers is not fine. That means if you belong to one caste and you want to do something else, there were boundaries. Of course, later on they created the boundaries. That's a different thing. But none of these theories, not just these theories, there are 10 other theories. None of those theories explain or give a foolproof explanation to the emergence of caste system. Okay, each and every theory has its own merits and own demerits. The idea is actually not to find out which theory is the best. The idea is to find out certain factors which are common in each and every theory. What is it? Based on the multiple theories, we collated certain common features to the caste system. That is important to us. That is why we study theories, not to debate which is right and which is wrong. When you study these multiple theories, you will understand there are certain common features, common themes to those theories. This is important to understand the caste system. So based on this, these are the common features of the caste system. Okay. First, there is segmental organization. That means one thing is clear: the society is divided into multiple segments, which we call them caste or varna. We are talking about caste as a system. It has divided the traditional Hindu society into multiple segments, right? That segmental division is there, different social groups, and it is ascriptive. That means your membership to a particular social group is given to you by birth. It is not achieved. It is ascriptive. Ascriptive identity is that identity which is given to you by birth, which means caste identity, racial identity. Achieved identity is that identity which you achieve in your lifetime, like class identity. Understand? So, division of division of society into different social groups, first and foremost, into different social groups, isn't it? Next, it is given by membership is given by birth. Membership based on birth. Okay, right? And the society is divided into multiple groups, but they are not placed horizontally. They are placed in they're placed vertically. So they're placed hierarchy. This hierarchy is based on what? Ritual notion of purity and pollution. Ritual notion of purity and pollution. This purity and pollution is determined by what? Birth itself. So this purity and pollution principle is seen in every aspect. It is seen in diet. So upper caste diet is considered to be purer compared to the lower caste diet, right? Upper caste occupational patterns are considered to be purer compared to the lower caste occupational patterns. That is why even today there are certain occupations which are still undertaken by only the lower caste, be it washing, washerman, barber, or manual scavenging, which are considered to be impure. Okay, diet, occupational patterns, and also the rituals. The higher the hierarchy, the more rituals you are supposed to conduct. Okay, so this is hierarchy. And endogamous or endogamy, that means marriage within the caste, which is very important to maintain this hierarchy. Because once this notion of purity and pollution is gone, then the caste system is going to be liquefied, weakened, right? So marriage within the caste is also another feature, right? And commensality restrictions. Commensality restrictions. That means, what is commensality? Dining together, exchanging of food. So there are restrictions on this commensality, which means there are certain rules with respect to the exchange of food. They're not supposed to dine together, which is seen even today, unfortunately. There are certain villages, there are certain instances where upper caste children were not sent to the schools because they were made to sit and eat with the lower caste children in the midday meal program. And in fact, there are a lot of upper caste parents who protested against hiring a Dalit cook for the midday meal school. That is because of this feature. Commensality restrictions, restrictions on dining together, okay, exchange of food, dining restrictions. And it is not just between the upper caste and lower caste. Even in the lower caste also there are certain lot of restrictions, unfortunately. And raw food cannot be can be accepted, but cooked food cannot be accepted, something like that. There are a lot of restrictions. And other important factor, which is occupational segregation. As I said, it's just not division of labor, it is division of laborers. Division of labor means there are certain occupational groups, but there is great deal of flexibility to choose between different occupations. But this is division of laborers. That means if you are born in one community, you are supposed to confine to this occupation. You don't have the flexibility to choose between the occupations. So occupation determined by caste based occupation patterns. Caste based occupational patterns. Caste based occupational patterns. And civil and religious disabilities. Lack of entry into the temples, lack of access to the common property like grazing grounds, well, pond, right? All these are there. So even today, this kind of untouchability is there. So all these are the basic features of the caste system, right? However, these features have undergone great level of subjected to modern forces of change, and they have undergone some change. I'm not saying that each and every feature of the caste system is exactly the same as it is seen in the as it is written in the texts. Of course, we have experienced great change. If you have experienced change, such a drastic change, we wouldn't have been discussing this topic today. It is still relevant, it is still continuing in a different way. Okay, so that's what we are going to discuss further in this topic. That's where you are going to get most of the questions from. That analysis is important. Okay, if you remember, in the first day of the class I have shown you some previous year questions. I've explained you, I've shown you one question, how caste is assuming new identities and associational forms. Okay, but to understand that, you need to understand what aspects have actually changed the caste system. So the change started with advent of the British. Not just advent of the British, even before that, we have already discussed about the Varna versus Jati framework. Okay, there. So I'm not going to discuss here. Varna is the fourfold framework, that Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Jati is caste and subcaste. This is textual. That means this is more or less rigid, whereas the hierarchy of the subcaste and castes are more or less flexible. Varna framework is purely based on ritual factors, but Jati framework is based on both ritual and secular factors, which I have discussed. I'm going to give notes for this. Now, this makes us believe that caste is very rigid, and once you're born in one caste group, there is no scope for social mobility. That means you are never going to change your caste. But in terms of hierarchy, you may experience a little bit of social mobility. You may not change your caste identity. That is not possible. You're born in one caste, you'll die in the same caste. But the caste hierarchy might change. That is what there is a scope of social mobility. Okay. That's what the scope of social mobility. So that was made possible through this process known as Sanskritization. And this concept was given by a sociologist, Indian sociologist M.N. Srinivas, based on his study in Karnataka. Okay, based on his study in Coorg, the local villages in the Coorg district, where he studied this phenomenon of Sanskritization. What is the Sanskritization? I'm going to explain very briefly. This is an anticipatory socialization where lower caste try to emulate the cultural and social practices of upper caste with an anticipation of improving their hierarchy. Okay, it is like emulation of upper caste cultural and social aspects. Emulating, following, mimicking. Okay, emulation of upper caste culture. That means your diet. Lower caste started following strict vegetarianism, changing their occupation. This abstinence from certain occupations which were given to them by birth, changing in the occupational patterns, diet, and starting to do rituals, certain rituals and dressing pattern, starting to wear the sacred thread. The sacred thread is worn by only the twice born caste groups. That means Dvij, twice born caste groups like Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya. Shudras are not supposed to adorn the sacred thread, but they started emulating this practice. Sometimes you see certain communities use Brahmin in their as a tag, and they start wearing it, and they start using the titles, upper caste titles, upper caste rituals, dressing patterns, wearing sacred thread, rich occupations, diet, abstinence from alcohol consumption. That's what M.N. Srinivas, based on his study, has observed. Those communities, certain communities, stopped drinking alcohol since it was looked down upon and frowned down upon by the upper caste, and it was considered as impure. Right. So this is emulation of upper caste culture and social patterns by the lower caste with an anticipation of increasing their social status and experiencing some sort of social mobility. That process is considered as Sanskritization. But the question is, who is the reference caste? Who do they look up to? Is it Brahmins or any other caste? In fact, it depends completely on the context. The the anticipatory socialization actually, which means that they want to increase their status of their caste group, and the reference caste group can be anything, whichever holds the respect in that particular society, in that particular community, in that particular local village. They start practicing, they start emulating them. So reference caste is any upper caste, not just Brahmins, any upper caste. Then the question is, if at all, by just emulating the process, cultural practices, if you can improve your social status, anybody would do it. Every caste will start doing it. But why did it not happen? Can you give me a reason? It is, if it is that simple, changing your culture, that's it. Following the upper caste culture, then that should increase the social status of each and every caste group in the hierarchy. Why did it not happen? Any reason? See, to experience this Sanskritization, you need to have the material base for it. That means you might have already experienced economic development and educational development and political development. Only then you will start accepting their culture, and then there is a scope for social mobility. If there is no material base, simply by accepting the culture, you're not going to improve your social mobility. You're not going to improve your social status. So, prerequisite of material factors. That means you might have already experienced, you should have already been experienced economic aspects, education, political power, something. Something should have already been there. This material base is necessary. Then you'll start doing this. Then wait for a generation. Then you may experience. You may or may not. It is a long term process. It is not going to happen in 5 years or 10 years. Often in the process, you may also receive, you may also experience resentment from the upper caste. Initially, they are not going to accept. But down the line, after a generation or two generations, where people don't believe that, where people have not seen people from this particular caste group have stopped practicing their occupations a generation back. So the next generation people don't even know their past occupational patterns. Then they may start accepting you. It is a long-term process. Experienced. It is a long-term process, isn't it? And the best thing is to give credibility to your demands that we belong to this social status, this hierarchy. They start they start coming up with myth and legends. They'll start coming with myths and legends. Okay, they'll start tracing their lineage to some mythical figure in the society, figure in the history, some mythical figure in the Puranas. Sometimes we believe that there are certain caste groups who trace their lineage to a historical figure. We are the descendants of that particular figure. We are descendants of this figure. Some caste group says that they are descendants of Chitragupta. Some caste groups say that they are descendants of Valmiki. Some caste groups say that they are descendants of what is it, Balram, the Lord Balram. So these mythical figures. Some caste group says that they are descendants of some historical figure, Ashoka, Maratha, or Chhatrapati Shivaji. Understand? So this is so credibility, trying to enhance the credibility to their claims of achieving higher status is based credibility through tracing the lineage to historical and mythological figures. Credibility through tracing the lineage to historical and mythological figures. This is Sanskritization. Clear? So, before the advent or during the historical process, there are certain instances where certain caste groups may have experienced some sort of social mobility in terms of their hierarchy thanks to the process like Sanskritization. So, this was the first change in the caste system, which was considered to be rigid. Okay, and then the rest of the changes started with other aspects like impact of colonial rule and rest of the accepts. Okay, which I'm going to discuss because this is a lengthy topic here. When we start from the impact of colonial rule and caste system, and then what happened to the post independent history, like what are we going to do, what changes have been experienced in the post independent India, and later on how caste is still relevant in different spheres of life. Caste is relevant in economic sphere life, political sphere, and also the socio cultural sphere. So what are the new functions of the caste, new ideology of the caste, new identity of the caste? All these will be discussed. And then we'll discuss about caste in other religions, relation between caste and gender. These aspects are going to be discussed. So we're going to solve the questions accordingly. Okay. So that's a with the class. Did you receive notes for the yesterday's class? I have uploaded in the WhatsApp group. Please get the notes from the WhatsApp group. I'm uploading the PPTs and also the PDF notes there. Okay. Okay. Any doubts? Any doubts till now? Okay. I'm assuming there are no doubts. Thank you. Okay. Let's meet tomorrow. See you guys.